Hidden door hardware cost $500. I didn't know that until 5 minutes after I agreed on building one for my church.
There is no way I'm spending that much on hinges and latches, so I started piecing together a solution using common hardware store parts. If everything goes well, we should have only about $65 in this whole hardware setup. But the price isn't the only problem. This thing is massive, way bigger than anything I could find examples of online. These hinges will need to be stout or this whole thing is liable to tear itself apart.
But hey, I don't have to worry about that right now, because first, we need to build a bookshelf. Ooh, this is gonna be a brisk one.
I'm using an inexpensive pine plywood for this project to help keep costs down, and as you can see, it's already finished, and that's because I spent the last couple of days trying to put at least one coat on each of my boards to hopefully speed up the process. When you apply that first coat, it raises the grain a bit and things get kind of textured, so I came back with 220 grit sandpaper to help smooth things out, and if all goes well, I only have to apply one more coat. I'm always grateful for when my wife Molly's around and can help me on these projects because moving these big sheets of plywood is a heck of a lot easier with two people. As a long day comes to an end, I feel pretty darn accomplished. I managed to get quite a lot done today, and most of my parts are even cut out. With nightfall, my weather luck had officially run out. We awoke to a pretty dreary morning and it had been raining most of the night. I, for one, was very curious to get out and go check on the tent to see how it had fared over the night. And luckily, there wasn't any leaks to be seen, which is a good start. More testing is needed though before we take it on our first trip. Alright, let's get back to work on this. And with it off and on raining, things are going to get a bit more complicated because I don't have much space to work with. Pre-finishing all of those plywood sheets and then trying to cut as many of the parts as I could from the beginning feels like a real blessing at this point. These boxes that I'm making, I'm calling pillars, and they're on either side of the bookshelves, and they're actually what the bookshelves will hinge on. And I decided to make an entirely freestanding structure here instead of trying to connect it to the walls of the church, simply because if they ever change their mind and want to use this somewhere else, they absolutely can. trying to be as careful as possible putting each of these panels on. Because I'm using glue and brad nails, I'm afraid that I was going to get a lot of glue squeeze out and it was going to be a pain to clean up. But I did go back with a handful of screws just to make sure everything was fastened off in areas that hopefully I would be able to cover up later. With one of the pillars done, I went ahead and mortised in all of the hinges and created a second pillar that was mirrored from the first so that we'd have a left and a right side.
One of the questions I've been seeing in the comments recently is how do I come up with a lot of these designs, especially after the tent build? And I wanted to give you a brief overview of it. I kind of have a hybrid approach. It's digital and analog. So first I come up with the idea and I jot it down into my notebook as quick as possible so I don't forget it and try to get the overall dimensions and concept down there. And then I go onto my computer and I use one software, it's called SketchUp, and I try to get like a rough draft done without spending too much time on the details. And I'll usually print that rough draft out and I'll just paste it on my wall and look at it for a few days and try to come up with any ideas I might have of how to improve it before I go back to the computer and do my final design and prepare physical notes to then take to the build. So it's like a half digital, half analog system. And lately I've been using this cork board from today's sponsor Branch to help me organize a lot of that stuff and paste those designs up on my wall. I use some black masking tape to divide out the cork board into some different areas like my active projects as well as my pipeline of projects that are coming up or ideas that I might have for future projects. It's a super simple setup and it's what I've been doing for quite a while, just using post-it notes on the wall instead of a cork board, but the cork board is definitely a big upgrade and it also looks a lot better than post-it notes all over my wall. If you saw last video, I've been using their Ergonomic Chair Pro 2 whenever I'm in the design phase, whether I'm working on the computer or writing at my desk. And to be honest with you guys, I've never really been someone to fuss about a chair. I've got the cheapest one or whichever one was available and made it work. But I can tell you that after spending some time in a quality ergonomic chair, I'm starting to change my tune on that because I'm starting to realize that it's kind of worthwhile investing in the thing that you sit in all day while you're doing work. And it's always so easy to adjust it and make it feel just right for whatever I'm doing, whether I'm typing or writing at my desk. It's just always comfortable. If you're considering upgrading your workspace, whether that's to be more organized and more comfortable, feel free to head over to Branch's website. You can use the QR code here on the screen or check the links in the description below. Thanks again to Branch for sponsoring this week's video and supporting the channel. And let's get back into this build.
Putting up this header beam didn't go so well the first time, so I decided to add these little bitty cleats to the top so that I would be able to sit it up on top of each of the pillars and screw it in place. This is not only going to help me now, but it's really going to help me when I go to install it later. felt really good to get to this stage of the build, especially after fighting the weather for so many days in a row. And as miserable as it's been outside, I think I'll celebrate this with a little coffee break. It's pretty amazing what a simple intentional coffee break can do for your mood. And now, let's get to work on these bookcases. And this is actually a way that I've built many bookcases in the past. It's so simple. All there are these spacers, which dictate how far apart your shelves are, and you simply glue those to a side panel. It makes the side panel very beefy since it's 2 layers thick, and it also makes a dado, essentially, for your bookshelf, so your bookshelf is very strong. I ended up going with a full 3/4 inch back panel for these bookcases, which is extremely overkill in most cases, but I wanted to make sure that these bookcases remained square and didn't sag over time. Now we just need to add in our mortises for our hinges on the bookcases, and a little pro tip for you: if you score your pencil line with a sharp knife, it makes it so much easier to get very precise cuts with your chisel and your router. Now, I used 3 of those 4-inch hinges on this bookshelf, which is probably enough, but here's the secret sauce. I'm adding a caster wheel to the other side of the bookshelf that will take most of the weight off of the hinges, hopefully reducing the stress on them and making them last a lot longer without sagging.
gap, it's important not to just open one, but if you want to open two at the same time, so get really close.
Now, I'm not really sure if this counts as a secret bookcase door if you don't use a book to open the door. So I went ahead and I grabbed an old book from Goodwill and I cut out a bunch of the pages, leaving just a little bit at the top. This was the perfect spot to add in a 2x4 block, which I'm going to glue in place. And this will just give me a solid place to mount our latch to. I decided where I wanted to put the book and drilled a hole at the top of where the 2x4 is. And then I mounted one of these little wires that's actually meant for a gate latch. So you don't have to make this. It's only $5. And all I did was screw it into the top of that wooden block and then pass that cable through the back of the cabinet.
Do the honors.
Oh, the book?
Pull the book.
Shut up.
Now it doesn't open this side, you open that side.
Oh.
And then if you want to have them both open, you can do this.
Wow. Wow. Yeah.
Sound.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Good job.
Nice.
Nice.
So how does it work? Well, that cable passes through the hole and comes down to a really basic gate latch. It's that simple. When you pull on the book, it lifts up the gate latch, opening the latch and allowing the door to pass. Now, if you weren't doing double doors, this would be even simpler. But having the double doors with the gap, I had to add some blocking in there so that everything would work out just right. And to add more stability, because it's double doors, I added this little toggle clamp to the bottom to reduce any wobble that happens in the door when this isn't down.
Well, I'm not sure where the heck the week went, but this thing is looking quite good. We still have a little bit left to do. We gotta add some trim to cover up these gaps. We gotta decorate this thing to make it look super cool, and then we have to figure out how we're gonna take it all apart, get it to the church and get it installed. But that's all gonna have to happen next week. I'm gonna go spend some time with the family, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and just wanna say thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.